Welcome to PM Express, and indeed Ghana has a myriad of problems, a lot of problems which we need to try and solve. One of such problems which I think we're going to go to our graves with, even though some optimists think that, look, if we grab the bull by the horn, we may be able to solve it in our lifetime. It's the issue of land disputes. And my brother and my colleague Latif Idrisu did a documentary, Land Wars, and you listen to it, and there's a story that we hear time and time again, where my father said the boundary was, where my grandfather said the boundary was, and where I think the boundaries should be. And then I have my own stalwarts who are chiefs, who will sell land and then resell it and resell it. And somehow those who do the multiple sales seem to go free, and the victims who do the multiple buying are dragged through court for many years. And I'm told that indeed with all the litigation in our courts, I think land holds a huge percentage of cases in court where people don't seem to disagree. Would it ever come to a time where you can literally take a catapult, throw it, and wherever it lands, there's an owner for that patch of land? That will be the day, and that's where we are striving to get. So you see, as soon as the city grows or expands to get to any, rural township, all of a sudden, there are interest in there, and then there are stories in there, and then the litigation starts, and then land guards get in there. Land issues. Have you ever been bitten? Are you being bitten? What's your story? I'll try and see my producer Aisha will, let me hear one or two stories with regards to land. Why can't you just walk by a patch of land and that's yours and you register it? And it's become one of the reasons why businesses aren't able to thrive here, because the land purchase is so expensive. Each cases where people have to buy land 3 times just for their peace of mind. So you buy it from me, you buy it from Latif, you buy it from Timothy, just to get your peace of mind. But how many people can really afford that? We're talking about land, one of the prime commodities you need in any development, land to start with. And here we are, disputing, arguing, litigating, and pricing ourselves out of the market. My name is Anansa Kwao, the 4th chief of Akomo Edumasa. I don't have too much of a land litigation, even though I have a few my grandfather said, my grandmother said business. But on the road, we are not doing too bad. When I come back, talking to people who may understand it. But then there's a little clip that will set the conversation rolling. Don't go.
Everybody knows these criminals are called land guards. They are doing it with the support of the police divisional commander, ACP Jim. In this area, we call him the land guards commander.
Because we have documents to show that Chief sold the land to us.
From generations before this age, men and women have fought battles over land. Nations, communities, and people have fought bloody battles of conquest to rule over territories. Today in Ghana, land ownership and issues of litigation remain one of the critical causes of violence in our communities, towns, and villages. To own and use a piece of land, particularly in the national capital of Accra, might cost you more than just money. It might cost you your very life. Join me in the following documentary as I attempt to surgically interrogate the country's land use and management system. From the northern, southern, eastern, and western regions, the sad reality of the inefficiencies in the country's land management system exists, especially in the Greater Accra region. Stories of fraudulent land leases, violent litigation, and in some cases, gruesome killing over contentious parcels of land abound.
have given order. If anybody joke, shot him. Okay? If anybody joke, shot him.
Killing of rival faction is sadly shaping up as the norm. Classical case was what happened here in Andeman, a suburb of Amasaman in the Gan West municipality, where the development chief, who was lying on this bed, was shot and killed in cold blood on the 8th of June 2017 by unknown thugs. The grim outlook of Ghana's land management system doesn't get any easier and peaceful in the national capital. On August 28, 2017, thugs invaded, terrorized and set ablaze the auditorium of believers of house worship at Okwegono in the Lekma constituency, destroying properties worth thousands of Ghana cedis. A bishop who doubles as the contractor was working on parts of the church building at the time.
Immediately they got out of the car. They pointed at me, "You come here. You are the foreman, come here. You are very stubborn, come here." I said, "Why? Come here for what?" But they have been here before. I think about 2-3 months ago, they came to burn our storeroom. So when I saw them, that it is the same people, I had to flee from my life because the guy began to pull a gun from him, threatening me that I should come. So I had no option than to run for my life. So I meandered myself through the bamboos and managed myself out. They were chasing me up with a gun.
The inefficiencies in the country's land management system gave rise to an outlawed group. Here, we call them land guards. They've been protecting lands across the country, but many see these individuals as criminals.
There are so many issues. You know, in Ghana here, especially Accra, you are the owner of the land, by somebody who can come later on and say it belongs to him, the land belongs to him, with the same document. Somebody is holding document, somebody too is holding document. So that side, you have to involve land guards.
Land litigations have in recent times led to bloody clashes in neighborhoods and in some cases killing of rivalry factions. Residents of Ashiye Down, a developing community in the Adenton municipality in the national capital, have also been in a tussle with the CSIR over ownership of the land they claim they duly acquired and heavily invested in developing the land.
So we have documents to show that Chief sold the land to us. And I have my copy, this is my copy of the indenture, that of document that is showing that this land was sold to me by Chief.
Yeyo, as I decide to call him for the purposes of this documentary, spoke to me on the condition of anonymity. The private developer laments how some top directors at the Lands Commission forced him to cough up over 150,000 Ghana cedis in bribe before registering a 60-acre land he legitimately acquired.
The system just doesn't work. I mean, you have to go through the frustration and pay your way out of the frustration.
Well, so that's the story. With me in studio, Lateef Idrisu, multimedia journalist, in-house. My brother sat next to me. Lateef, you're welcome.
Thank you, Nana.
And then Timothy Anidoho, Principal Lands Officer at the Lands Commission. Timothy, you're welcome.
Thank you, Nana.
It's been a long while.
long while.
So Afishiapa. Afishiapa. Lateef, why did you pick this? This topic to investigate anyway.
Yeah, Nana, thank you for the question. In your intro, you mentioned that this is one of the major issues in the country, major challenge facing the country, land administration. But it's rather interesting that we've not had anybody to take on this issue and analyze, to deal with it, essentially. So I sat back and said, okay, if no one is doing it, let me give it a start. And I've had personal experiences. If I say personal experiences, I'm talking about back home. My dad, we had this experience. He bought a land. When he passed, this chief sold the land again out to someone else. And So yes, that also got to me, and I said I need to take up this and get the challenge addressed. So that's essentially how come I took this whole project up and worked on.
Timothy, I mean, this land business, this land issue. Let me just start with a guy who was waving his blue, encyclopedia, say, look, I have my indenture, I bought it from the chief, I own this land, and yet still there was somebody working on the land. Where could he have gotten wrong?
Well, first of all, I'd like to commend Latif for discussing something that I think as a country we have made attempts to discuss, but it's something that is still being resolved. Now, before we came on set, I was just telling him that maybe we should do more with education first. If you want to acquire a parcel of land, the suggestion is that you should do a search with the Lands Commission. It's decentralized, it's in all the 10 regions. Maybe not too decentralized to the district level, but we have it in all the regions. They would have a record of all transactions that have been registered. And the emphasis on registered. So if you haven't registered, your Lands Commission may not have that record. So the search is supposed to give you an idea about the status of the land. Then you move on to enter a contract with whoever is selling. So if it is a stool, if it's a family, if it's an individual, he prepares what we call the indenture. That's where, and I'm sure when Latif did his documentary, you'll find out, most people do it back to front. The first thing they do is see the land. The landowner then charges them some amount, they give them some indenture. So by the time they are coming to the public office, they would have concluded that contract. And the assumption is that the guy has title to the land he's selling. Then you come for registration. And that's where you might find things to the contrary, and then the issues start developing from then on. So I would say maybe he has an indenture. Did he do a search first? Is he sure what the status of that land is? Holding the indenture itself may not be enough. What he needs to do would be to attempt to register that parcel of land. And I think that's where he may have got it wrong.
So if I have a parcel of land and I'm selling it to you, what do? You survey that patch?
Yes, because it's visual, it's TV, I brought a few sample of things I could just quickly show so that it's easier for everybody to understand what you are discussing. So you get what we call the site plan. And the site plan may look like this. And I'm sure he can zoom in a bit. It's a plan that has some grid lines on it, and it's showing, it's just with some lines across, with the parcel identified somewhere there. So this is how a site plan looks like. Okay. It might not necessarily be on this blue sheet, but it would be a site plan. That's what we call a site plan. Okay. And that's just supposed to define the exact coordinates of the site you wish to enter a transaction in. And that's where the transaction begins. Because if you don't have that site plan, then what is the basis of your transaction? And mostly, as soon as you identify the landowner says, pay me money to do a site plan for you, when you have not verified what the status of the land is. So it should be rather, he has a site plan. He offers to you, you want to buy, you do a search, then you know what the status is. Then the transaction can continue on for the registration.
So you take the site plan to Lands Commission
and do a search.
Say, I'm interested in buying this land.
Yes, I want to do a search. Can you do a search for me? So you pay, and then you do a search on the land. That search will give you the results if anybody before has done any transaction there. If there is any transaction in the past, it might be, is it free? There will be no record there, but at least it shows you that there is no encumbrance as in the records. Then you go back to the person and say, okay, I've checked, I've seen that everything is okay. Now can we enter the transaction? The advice that we often give, which is a practical advice, is that when you go onto a site, a land to buy, there are things that you glean from the site. If you go on to stand onto the land, and from Latif's documentary, you see the confusion, commotion that happened on the site when the people went to the site to work. See, we guns straying left and right, because it gives you a certain sense that that area itself has some history of misunderstandings, and it's often intra-family disputes, interfamily disputes, inter-stool disputes, and once the base is not right, there's a dispute on the base. It's a recipe for the disaster that we could see happening on the site. Yes.
And Nana, he mentioned that you need to get the search at the commission.
Yes.
And that is where the problem starts, from at least from what I've done. I'm not an expert in land administration, and I don't pretend to be one.
Yeah.
But what I found was that to submit your documents at the Lands Commission, the first port of call is the registry. Am I right?
Well, for a search, is the CSA, customer service. We've now created
going through the processes of getting your land title.
Yes.
The first port of call is the registry, but the registry is not in the position to tell whether land named A has already been sold or leased to a party. So we can have the registry taking in as much as 3, 4, 5, 6, you can count it, people coming in to register a particular land, because they do not have the capacity to tell whether, oh, this land you are coming to, register, has already been passed on from party A, who is the owner of the land, to a buyer. So you cannot buy it. So they can take it on, next person will come, the registry will take it on. So this man can sit at home and sell this particular land to at least 10 people, take the money, they will go and do the search, and it do not show that the land is in the name of stool A or stool B. And I think that is partly to blame for the chaos that we have seen.
Yes, but Nana, in Latif's example, you find out the dishonesty is not from the registry, it's from the person selling. That's one. That person, in your introduction, you said something that was very poignant. That person is never part of the litigation. What would happen is that those 10 people may enter into a litigation and ignore the chief or the stool that sold it to 10 of them. Now, what the registry does is that we are operating within the context of the laws of this country. So the law that governs the preparation of the deeds, which we popularly call indenture, is the conveyancing decree. Now, when you come to Lands Commission to submit your document, if we were to follow Latif's advice, then upon submission, the Lands Commission should be able to say, oh, this land, Mr. X has submitted a document to us before, so we won't collect yours. Or, oh, that land has been registered to somebody yet. But in the operations of Lands Commission, remember, this is a contract between two parties. Lands Commission is not the determinant of who owns what. We've left that to our courts to determine. So the law says, Lands Commission, receive it. I can receive this document today, and in the process, I'll find out this document was registered in 1952 or 1962. It's only then that the public officer can now inform you that, oh, this is your land, even though you would have paid for registration. It is after you have submitted. Only then that the Lands Commission can go ahead and write to you and say, Mr. Even after that, he can go litigate tomorrow and come back, and the court says, Nana, you have the right to that parcel of land. So Lands Commission is not the determinant of titles. We don't. What we do is we receive every application that comes in. And there's a key thing the lawyers will tell you, caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. If the buyer is as careful as he can at the beginning, it usually reduces, and I'm saying reduces the litigation things, because he would have done some checks before. However, even if he missed it, Lands Commission is not in a position to say upon submission that as soon as you bring it, we check it at the collection point and say, oh no, this land has been registered before, so take it back. That's not what is done. We'll receive as many applications as come in, because the law doesn't make us the determinants necessarily of contracts that have been entered between two parties.
So somebody registers that land?
That land is available. Because
so you just keep telling everybody who comes, look, it's not registered?
Yes, it's not registered. And then when they all bring their documents, the law could envisage such a problem. So it says whoever submits his document first, because the law could envisage a certain trickery. So if I'm a public officer and Latif brings his document, and then Nana brings his own second, we take the dates in which we brought it. If suddenly Nana's own by some date beats Latif's document, the law seems to restrain Lands Commission and say you should have taken care of Latif's one first. And it's who submits first, not who signed his own first. So if Latif signed his own and kept it under his bed, and Nana signed his own 2 years after, and then submitted his for registration. Remind you, yours was not with us. So Lands Commission cannot take responsibility for what we didn't have in our system. So usually we use the visa principle as an example. As many as apply, come, you pay. If they approve, they approve. If they don't approve, they tell you they don't approve. So we don't have a system where we prevent you from submitting your document, because then Lands Commission then will be now determining title for people. What we do is register title. So you bring to us, we check against our records based on, we believe, a first come, first served basis. If 10 of you submitted your documents and then Latif was the first to submit, by law, we are supposed to consider Latif's application as first in time to the other documents. So that's what it is. You submit, we receive. We receive as many as, and then in the process, we then communicate to Nana that, hey, this parcel is subject of this transaction before all that. So that's how it is done. Yes.
So with regard to those doing multiple sales, I mean, yes. Are they now roped into any, or they're still left to do multiple sales?
If we understand the nature of land ownership we have in Ghana, then we can understand why we are where we are. Our French neighbors are lucky to have pursued the policy of assimilation, like the French. So they have almost all lands nationalized. In Ghana, we don't have so. We've looked, our law in the Constitution, Article 11, lists the type of laws we have in this country. And customary law is part of our law in this country. Our lands are not nationalized. So it means that Nana's custom is not Latif's custom. It's not Timothy's custom. If I want to acquire land in the Volta region, the route may be different. If I was in Latif's home, it might be different. If I'm in Nana's place, the rules might be different. Those customary laws are not necessarily codified in one place. So if you come to Accra, mind you, if a chief is selling land, who is the chief of your village today may not be the chief tomorrow. If you are disputing with somebody up on your headship, who is the chief, it goes to the roots of land acquisition, because you are signing papers, I am signing papers, yet we are in dispute. And so the multiple sales often is at the level of who owns and who can sell. And if Ghana, 20% of land is said to be government, and 80% is in the hands of individuals, chiefs, tools, then let us concentrate on where the 80% is. Because trust me, where government lands are situated, I and you know that you hardly get. I joined Lands Commission sometime in 2000, early 2000s. By the time I got there, records of land transaction in 50s were available to me. So if I was an officer and I was taking decisions, I have, because it's government land. But how many stools have a record of what they are granting? So sometimes the stools even behave not deliberately, but lack of knowledge. His father sold to Latif, or Latif's dad. Latif's dad never went to develop that land, but that land is still vacant in his mind. So he sits in this in council and says a surveyor should go and take that plot and sell to somebody else. In his mind, the land is available to lease out. But if he had a small record in his place, then he could look at the record and say, oh, this land, my predecessor gave it to Mr. X, so it's not available to lease. So there are some interventions, and maybe as we discuss, we can look at how far-reaching those interventions have gone to assist us all improve where we are with that system.
Well, don't move. We're coming back and we're still discussing land wars. Well, thank you very much. And land wars. I'm hoping that there will be a day that we can all register our lands and go. But Latif, I don't know, was there one thing that you thought was synonymous with all the people complaining, and where would it be? Would it be those selling the land? Would it be those at the commission registering the land? Was there one particular story that seems to run across?
Yeah, that dishonesty comes from the people who lease out the lands to the buyers. Of course, if you don't sell the land to multiple buyers, we wouldn't have any litigation whatsoever. So it starts from the sellers, those who lease out the land. So the clans, the stools, the chiefs, the individuals who lease out lands. Yes, we can say that they are the starting points of all these litigations that we've had, I mean, across the country.
I mean, Timothy, do you also get complaint that my land is being sold to somebody? Is that...
Well, that's it. And as Latif was saying, we register so the problems will be created and will come to us. And, we're discussing offset. Then it gives room for certain influences, because once the person is being dishonest from the beginning, he wants to take advantage of public service, and which has its own challenges. So complaints you receive all the time. People even just come and do a search to verify if what I registered 2 years ago is still in your records, because suddenly somebody has appeared on his site. So I've had friends who have registered land title, and they call you on a Saturday morning. Hey, Timothy, what is happening? You people have tampered with my records because somebody has appeared that he also has documents to the land. So I said, oh, you've registered yours. Have you shown him what you have? Ask the other party, what does he have? He might end up with a receipt on your site plan or another indenture purported from that same chief who would have assigned it to him. So then they have to go to the nearest police station, or they have to then end up litigation. But the litigation is always between the parties, and they never want to draw the landowners into it.
You can't register land twice?
You can't. The law doesn't give room for that. It doesn't give room for that. And because it's a human institution, there are times where errors have occurred. Say it's the same site plan and a similar site plan. There's room for correction of those errors, but it's not possible except it's by a judgment of a court. So it's already registered to Latif, they've had a litigation, and suddenly the court says, place it on top of this. It's not possible, and it shouldn't be possible. However, most times people start believing what the other party is saying, because he's hiding his document. Oh, I also have documents, you have documents, I have documents. Okay, once you start asking them to provide the documents, then you come and see that there's some irregularity somewhere. So we won't say as a commission that we've never had cases where some errors may have happened in terms of registration. Minimal as they are still errors, and therefore we admit to those things, but there's always room to correct them. The land title certificates, which we give to people in Greater Accra region, which will look like this after the process of completion. So I brought a sample just to show to your viewers who are home. This is the final product of what we call a land title registration. This will happen in the Greater Accra region, parts of Ashanti, and a few pilot areas. But all the other places in the country, because of your wide view of your viewership, will start with an indenture like this and end with an indenture like this. So the title certificate will not apply countrywide. It will apply in Greater Accra and in other parts of, but in other areas, you start with this, you end with this. Only that there will be stamps and evidences of registration on it. Then you are in the books of the commission. So once you are in the books, anytime you want to assign to somebody else, you go back and then you come to us. Again, mind you, it's the parties that are entering the contract. Lands Commission is just registering what the parties have agreed to enter into. So
once this is the last stop, basically?
Yes, for the regions that I have mentioned. Okay. And this will be the last stop. In other regions, it will still be this document, only that it will have evidences of a deed registration stamped.
So the land certificate means that's it.
Yes,
this
in
is
fact,
your
the law itself says that this is indefeasible, this document. However, it also categorizes certain conditions. If it was procured by fraud, by mistake, by misrepresentation, the courts will deal with that. And even we as officers of the commission don't have the power to cancel certificates like this. It's the courts that direct us to cancel them. So even if it were done by these conditions that I'm telling you, it's the courts that may direct us to cancel them. We as officers don't have the power to cancel them. Yes.
Timo, I mean, going forward, how can we reduce, minimize, stop? I dare say stop, but how can we reduce?
Well, I believe as a country, since 1999, we've begun to look seriously at land administration in this country. So 1999, there was what we call the land policy, our first and only land policy. The government then went on to look at the land administration project, which was supposed to be a 25-year program. We've done 2 phases, 2003 to 2008, and we will be ending the phase 2 coming to the end of the year. There have been some interventions, and I'll quickly mention them and see how they have helped us. If you come to Lands Commission today, you find out that in 5 regions we have what we call the CSAUs, the Customer Service and Access Units. I don't know whether Latif had the pleasure of walking through there. So you find out that now 4 agencies, which was the Survey and Mapping Division, Land Registration Division, Public Invested Land, and Land Valuation Division, have now all been merged in one under Act 767. So we now have what we call the Customer Service and Access Unit in 5 regions, and we are working on doing for the rest of the regions. So in Greater Accra, Western, Eastern, Upper East, and the Northern regions, we have the Customer Service Unit. So they are nice bank-like places where it's a one-stop place. You come, you submit your application. The Lands Commission then commits itself to processing the document for you within a period. Currently, it's 3 months. Our current minister is pushing the Lands Commission to have it in 1 month. We've accepted the challenge, and that's what we are working towards. Under the Land Administration Project, there's what we call the Ghana Enterprise Land Information Systems. Our records over the years have largely been in paper form, in manual form. So you are dealing with hard copy files that can be put here and maybe misplaced, and errors may occur. So under the Ghana Enterprise Land Information System, the Lands Commission is going, the famous word now, digital. It's trying to scan its records, try to get them digitally so that they move the records digitally. So if you come for a search, it should be easier and quicker for us to produce a search for you, rather than this whole e-official going manual and on. And hopefully by early next year, the pilot should begin. So that's one major way in which we are going, because once people start having confidence in the public service to be able to deliver an honest product for him, then it will encourage more people to come and register. And also the stools and the families under the lab have looked at what we call customary law codification, where people, you tell us what your stool does, and then it can be codified. If I come to your area, I know the process by which I should go through. And in areas like the Ashanti region, where we have one overlord, you might be acquiring land very far away from Kumasi, but the document ends up with the overlord for a pending of signature. So people should understand things like that, so they don't go and do the wrong thing and then later it becomes a problem. So we have customary land secretariats which are customary, which are driven. And I will encourage you, Nana, if you have a small setup at your place where you keep records of what you give, and we saw a good demonstration of what you did when we were not on, it helps. So you also keep your records. So you can cross-check your records even against the public records. So these are things that we've done, and then because it's now more transparent, you can complain. You can, if Latif comes today and he has a problem with Lands Commission, he has a little bit of confidence more to enter and find some officer he can talk to. And there's room for inquiries. He can come and make inquiries. What I want to encourage the public is that we should not be afraid to name and shame. And Ghanaians by nature are very reluctant. And I was discussing with him, the gentleman who was complaining about paying a huge sum of money to an officer at the commission. That is something that the current commission...
Maybe the process was a bit too slow.
Yes, so the process is what we are trying to improve so that people will not be encouraged to pay sums of money. But I'm saying that the best way to deal with some of these issues is to name and shame. Honestly, if you have a problem and somebody claims, oh, pay me X amount of money, and we've seen people who have refused to and yet found the right way to discuss it with the appropriate quarters. And I'm not disappointed, but if somebody has 60 acres and he comes to register and he has to pay so much, it gives a sense that there's so much rent seeking in the system. And I think one bad nut cannot hold a whole institution to ransom. We encourage people to be able to, and the current management of Lands Commission, the current chairmanship of our Lands Commission chairman would not, he's made it absolutely clear.
From absolutely site clear. Plan to,
yes, to indenture,
land certificate,
yes.
What's the...
That's what I'm saying, that Lands Commission commits itself to 3 months now, after you have brought your indenture. Because the site plan is all, between the site plan and doing of the document, it's a transaction between two parties, you and the landowner. Lands Commission is not involved. It's after you have finished that, you have paid what we call your stamp duty, which is a tax. That's when you come to us now and say, register the land for me. And that's where we count our 3 months that the minister has told us to work on 1 month. That I'm sure with the coming of the Ghana Enterprise Land Information System, it will be easier for us to make that target of the 1 month.
So if I have the site plan and I want to check, make sure nobody's sold it, how long do you get back to me?
We give you a period of 6 weeks. That has been debated extremely. If we are now going to work on 1 month for registration, then the commission is looking at working quicker for you to get your search so that you can then come and then register. At the moment, we give you 6 weeks wait period. It might be quicker, hopefully most times, or sometimes based on some few nuances, it might be a little bit longer, but that's what we give to you now when you come.
Nativ, I mean, do you realize that that's where the panic is? Because you found this really juicy land that, you know, the woman comes and says, well, you know, my husband is dead and I'm trying to move to UK, so I'm trying to sell this land. And you know that if you put your shop there, you know, this is a good location.
Very vantage position.
Vantage position. These guys were saying, well, 6 weeks. So you might as well just secure it. You know, just secure it.
So I think maybe the process is, you think of fast tracking the process.
That is clear. That's what we started doing with what we call the business re-engineering process. So what the process that you used to acquire this has changed since 2015 ended. This was all in response to, that's why the minister is insisting, do it in 1 month. Look, the guy needs his title now, here and then. If you tell him 3 months or more, then you are not achieving anything close to that. So maybe, and Lands Commission may be suffering from a history of certain delays and discomfort and misplaced documents. So we understand.
You see, but the history also is that, you know, if you grease the system, your file seems to move
faster.
A bit quicker.
Faster. You see, we are a public service institution, and we will be very hypocritical to stand there and say it's a perfect system. It's not. It's in response to things like this. That's why we've tried to make our systems a little bit more transparent. First, when you bring your documents to Lands Commission, we don't even tell you when it will finish. You come in and we just put it in and we say, whenever we are ready, you hear from us. You are not even sure even where you are submitting your document. You are submitting it to an officer or somebody else. But now at least we have an open place. You submit it, you get a certain receipt. That tells you in 3 months' time, we have told ourselves we should be ready. Hopefully that even will change to 1 month. If you come in 3 months, it's not ready. Where I work, they come and question you. 3 months, you told me what's happening. There's a system where the person at the front can check electronically and see, oh, we are at this stage. Maybe this is the reason why. And it's been a system that we've been developing. We've been developing since 2015, October. We are not there yet, but it has made things much easier. So those who have tested our system can themselves testify. Not everybody may have had a totally good experience, but it's an attempt to begin to do things more transparently and then try to let the public have confidence in what we do. So,
I think in your report, I think there was government acquired land. There was CSR, you know, disputes between, you know, probably the locals and government acquired land. What was the story there?
Encroachers. It all has to do with people encroaching government land. So these people around Ashie down is in the Adenton municipality. They encroach government lands. At that point, CSIR had not come to locate their offices there. So they took it for granted that, okay, these are patches of land. Nobody's living there. Let's go and, build our properties there. They didn't just walk in there to build the properties. Chiefs, like you heard the guy, he was showing the indenture. Chiefs sold the land to us. So that brings in the conflict between government and traditional authorities. Traditional authorities sometimes go behind government and sell public vested lands. Government sometimes lease out public vested lands to private developers without the consent of traditional authorities. So you get situations such as what is happening in Ashie down, where now the CSIR is trying to move the people from the location, and they are making the case that, where do you expect us to go? We've bought it from chiefs, we've built our properties, now you are sacking us. Where else do you expect us to go?
Timo,
so he said something, that government has the power, and our Constitution Article 20 sets that on a rule. Government can acquire land. Honestly, Akosombo Dam is a government acquisition.
Oh, talk to me about
Akosombo Dam is a government acquisition.
Please talk to me about Akosombo Dam.
We'll speak about many things that this country has done that are good also, that are government. The stadiums that you see are government acquisitions. So government uses its power to acquire land. If government doesn't use the land immediately, and we've had past governments having a vision that is larger than where we are now. So Legon was not what it is now. It was acquired many years by Kwame Nkrumah. But there's a certain vision of a school. If the acquisition is in excess of what is required at this time, if the acquiring agency, so let's say in the case of CSIR, there's no permanent way of protecting that land. Mind you, our Act 125 that backs compensation is a one-off payment of compensation. So we paid it to Nene Apia in 1962. He spent the money. That generation has spent the money and gone. The next generation comes back. A new person installed as a chief. He sees a fallow land lying there. And his mind, you are depriving me of my income. The institution that is the managing institution has not also taken steps to necessarily protect it because it might be expensive, wall it or do something. So the temptation to get people encroaching, and mostly when people go onto the land, the guy waving the indenture may, I don't know, may not have done a search or may have done a search. And I have a practical example that I'll end this discussion with. A friend of mine came asking for a search to be done in Wager area because there's a large government acquisition. So I did a search, formal official search. He paid, got the results, and asked me for my view. I told, oh, this is government land. What he told a common friend of ours later was that you were envious of the fact that he wanted to acquire property. And the whole place is developed. He can see structures. How come I am telling him it's government land? So he went ahead and he bought it. He might have built it. He's living there. The next moment, the acquiring agency comes and says, I want to break it down or I want to use it. Then this issue arises. So Lands Commission has always been advising acquiring agencies, take steps to protect what you have. Because once people develop it, it becomes difficult to enforce a certain rule. Mind you, this involves the assemblies also. You cannot develop without a permit. You cannot develop if your title is not cleared. So how come people can go and develop structures on government land without permits? And so it's a collaboration between Lands Commission, between the acquiring agencies, between the assemblies. So if everybody were to take his part, play his part in this, maybe it should not be possible for those government lands to be encroached on, as it were. But you said something about us looking for the consent of the stools before we lease it out to private developers. When you acquire a land, simplicity, all the interest extinguished. So government has a right to do what it may with it. I know. So
even if they acquire for a hospital, they can lease it to a hotel now.
So there's a Supreme Court judgment where the courts have the view that when government acquires, if you look at the Constitution, Article 20, it lists what the government purposes for health, for safety, for all kinds of things. But remember, government has responsibilities of facilitating housing also. So you see private houses in airports area. They were government lands that government acquired for airport. But you cannot use only for airport. You need to control the area around the airport. So government then leases to individuals. So after many years, the stool comes back and things, they are deprived because other individuals have been given the land. So maybe we should more be in discourse to see a way in which the stools will not feel that kind of way in it. But government has the right to facilitate housing, and that's how you see all those beautiful houses that you see around the airport area because it's government acquired. Some was used for airport, some was zoned for 37 hospital is acquired for hospital, Bema camp is acquired for military. So government is just facilitating its business and it can choose many ways by which it wants to do that.
I hope we'll get part 2 and then we'll need to look about the social impact of all this acquisition because, you know, you may acquire a whole patch of land, you know, for a piggery and the people living there, you know, maybe Muslims and not necessarily want to be around pigs. I'm just citing an extreme example, but what then happens with all these acquisitions is that, you know, the land is used for what the indigents may not necessarily would want to, you know, have close to them. And all these conflicts generates, but I think the education should continue. We'll see if Aisha will bring this show back sometime next week. But I want to say thank you very much, Timothy and Lateef, for raising this blood topic. It's literally blood matter. And we'll try to talk about it more. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back to do this all over again. Guys, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.